Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Joshua Moore, programmer for the Jewish Film Institute, and it's my pleasure to welcome our special guests. We have the director of Adventures of a Mathematician, Thor Klein, and the producer, Lena Verma, and the lead actor, Philippe Tlokinski. And we welcome. And we also have our ASL interpreter, Pilar, with us. Thank you, Pilar. So thank you all for being here. Really enjoyed the film and excited to talk to you all. Congratulations on the wonderful movie. Let's start with, I guess for Thor and for Lena, how did this film start for you? You know, how did you discover Stanislaw Ulam's autobiography, and kind of what drew you to the story?
Well, it goes back a long way. When I was about 13 years old, I discovered a book in the library of my hometown, which was called "Who Got Einstein's Office?" And it was basically a book about the story of the Institute for Advanced Study. And in this book, there were also Stan mentioned and Johnny von Neumann. And I was quite fascinated by it because they were not what I expected mathematicians to be. They would drive fast cars, throwing parties and wearing funny hats. And it inspired me to, and it made me want to become a mathematician myself. But unfortunately, I wasn't very talented. But I pretended. I thought, okay, these guys were also. Maybe I'm a late riser, essentially. So maybe I will discover my talent a bit later. But when I was about 16 years old, I was sitting next to a guy in class who was actually incredibly talented. And to me, it became obvious that I have no significant mathematical talent at all. But nevertheless, which threw me in a big crisis at these days in my teenage years. But I was still fascinated by the ideas behind it and by these characters, and kept reading about them all these years. And in film school, I came across Stan's book, Adventures of a Mathematician, and it had this story of the friendship between Stan and Johnny in the center of it. And that reminded me of these early days when I started reading about them. And I asked Lena whether we could possibly option the book. And and then she took it on, and we started to do research.
Yeah, I mean, we've been all over the place in Poland and which is now in the Ukraine and the US. And from early on, I knew that it's going to be important to involve Poland as a country, because Stan Ulam is originally from Poland. So I reached out to Joanna Szymanska from Ship's Boy, who's my Polish co-producer. And we kind of from the beginning, from the development, we did it together and worked together on the project to get it done, because for us, it was both a great story about immigrant scientists in the US. So that was very important for me as well, being a daughter of an immigrant myself.
Yeah, and it was also great to discover all these brilliant minds that were still alive when I was doing research. I had the honor to meet Freeman Dyson, for example, one of the greatest mathematicians of this decade, who knew them both personally. And so I got very, very interesting insights in this particular period. And my fascination grew, even though I was already very interested in the subject, grew while doing research and discovering all these time witnesses. So yeah, from there, it took on a certain kind of momentum, so to say, in our lives.
Thank you. And Philippe, how familiar were you with Stan? And was there anything, any archival materials or besides his book that you could use for reference when you were set to play him?
Before I got the offer, so when they called me for the casting, I knew not so much about Stan Ulam. I knew a few things about the school of Lvov, the Lvov School of Mathematics. So I knew a bit of the characters as Banach, very famous here in Poland, and well, obviously I had to catch the train and to get to know all those great mathematicians, and of course to read about Stan, to read Adventures of a Mathematician, but also a book about where he comes from. And I was very interested in the process of creating this character to know about this school of Lvov, because it was essential for me to understand where he comes from. And I very quickly understood that the book is about the movie will be about friendship. So it would be very essential to understand who he knew, who he loved before he got away from Poland.
Sure. Was there any old film footage that existed of him, or did you use anything like that to help get into character?
Well, I think Thor mentioned, I don't know if it's a point of reference, but A Beautiful Mind. Well, I mean, it's not about Stan Ulam, but I mean, A Beautiful Mind was definitely one of my reference before the shooting.
Sure.
After the shooting, I just realized that it's something a bit different. But yeah, I mean, I also have to mention that I was shooting a Polish action movie during the casting. So when I got the offer, I was finishing. When we started to shoot Adventures of a Mathematician, I was still shooting for a period of 2 weeks an adventure movie, an action movie called Courier. I don't know the title in English. I think it's the Fighter of the Resistance or something like this. From Pashikowski. And so yeah, we had a period of adjustment where I had to find and to switch regularly from one character to another. I remember Thor mentioning there was this scene where I had to slam the door after a fight and go to see my friend, and I just had to walk through the corridor. And Thor came to me after the first take and said, "Well, less James Bond, please." So yeah, we had a few adjustments to do, but it was a great process, and I could speak a lot about creating this character. I should mention probably someone that I will.
Yeah,
I should mention Giles Foreman. You probably don't. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Giles Foreman, but we had a coach, an acting coach on set, and it's the first time I had on set rehearsal with an acting coach. And the first time I brought this book. If anybody is interested for acting, this is the book I took from Giles' school in London, and it's a lot of theory. I don't know if it's interesting for the mortal reader, but it's very deep for an actor. It's the biggest lesson I ever had.
What was your biggest takeaway from that book?
Well, not from the book directly. I mean, I took way more from the experience with Giles on set, giving me. I mean, he was constantly giving me some. How do you say? I missed the word. Kind of suggestions. He was, giving me suggestions and just to influence my game. My play in a way that I was not even aware of. And the book came later. The book came in a moment where, after this experience, I just wanted to understand what I did on set. So I had to kind of go through the theory after experiencing the practice.
I see. So I think, so much of this film, the power comes from the kind of the internal. It's a very internal story. This struggle against the moral dilemma of the bomb. And I'm wondering what each of your approaches to the story were, to the film were, knowing that it was going to be a largely internal conflict.
This was my starting point essentially was that Stan was someone who would constantly use his charming personality and his humor to hide his true feelings, which was very appealing to me in the first place when I started to write it. But also I had when I started the writing process, I had certain theories what this might be about, what this story actually might be about. And through the process of doing research and writing, a lot of these theories, they proved me wrong. Essentially, it turned out that the moral question took essentially over. It really took the whole. It's essentially what these characters had to struggle with their whole lives, and there was no easy answer or no solution. But and it's not something that is easy to decide. I guess as every director, I wanted to put the audience in a position where they afterwards could feel this ambiguity and this kind of conflicted directions they had the opportunity to go in. Because in the first place, it was a very simple question. There was Hitler, who people thought is about to build the bomb, and so it was an easy decision. But later on, obviously, with dropping the bombs and with the Cold War starting, it became a completely different issue, and it can only be understood if you look also at the fact that they were Jewish and the special situation they were placed in, which was my something that I wanted to explore essentially in the film.
Sure.
I think it's also what was very important to me is that the story also gets reflected in the creative way how the story is told on screen. Like, for example, Thor developed this style, this shooting style with Tudor Panduru, our cinematographer from Romania, that there are very long immersive shots. So the audience kind of gets the time to get immersed in this feeling. And it is a very quiet film, but then if there is an accent in the score, it is basically resonating quite deeply. So I think that was also very important for me, that it's not only the story that tells it, but also the way how it's shot and how the sound design is. And of course, on a big screen, it would be, I guess, much more immersive even. So I just hope that all your audience has watched it on a as big as possible screen at home.
So do I. And how about for you, Philippe, knowing that you have this kind of internal struggle as your character, what was your approach to taking that on?
Well, I was listening Thor and Lena, and I just brought back to my memory that something essential. No, I knew that this from theater. There is no drama, there is no scene without conflict, and very often this conflict appears in many forms. In a Batman movie, it would be the Joker, but you always need a bad guy or a conflict or a situation that creates tension. And of course, it's the responsibility of the actor to understand this and to have it inside. But it's way easier to get to this when everybody understands it on stage and when it's already on paper, and then it makes the work very easy actually to go through. And I think that the best thing I could say is that just thank you to the entire team, because everybody understood that. All the partners understood that when we played the scene, We just got through the scenes because of the conflict, and Thor understood that. He was clever enough to understand that we are talking, everybody understood that we were talking about the bomb, and the bomb is actually not even visible on screen. It's out of the frame, but it's constantly present as it is in our everyday life. I mean, until today. So yeah, on many levels, the conflict was there. Everybody understood that, and the best thing I could say is that it was actually pretty easy to get the feeling of this conflict and this tension on set.
That's great. Yeah, I really love how we don't see the bomb, but we don't need to. It's we can feel that power, and that makes me think of Stan's life. I'm sure I haven't read the autobiography, but I'm sure it goes into much more about later in his life. So maybe you can talk a little bit why you wanted to center on just this period of his life rather than tell his whole life story, which I thought works really well in this film, to focus on this intense period of time.
Mm-hmm. For me, the 40s and 50s were the time when essentially, there's this phrase that people use from time to time, that science lost its innocence or something like that, which sounds intriguing, but what happened was that the scientific endeavor became an industry. This place became an industry, and this is from a group of people. I mean, there's the fact that only a handful of people at the early 1940s in the US had a knowledge about quantum physics to the degree that would allow them to actually pursue such an endeavor, to a place where this was essentially in the 50s, knowledge that way more people had, and that was transformed into this complex, this military industrial complex, essentially, was a backdrop that I was very intrigued by. And to see also what these various characters, what it would do to them, going this way. And I was, from the beginning, I was not so keen on telling the story in a cradle to grave way, as they say, but to really focus on a snapshot of history, and trying to get this snapshot as precisely as we possibly can, and also build it in a way from the production design in a way that it's really so precise that it is convincing as such an historic historic snapshot, and this place has this image of this biblical image of these Jewish people lost in the desert, so to say, building this thing, is something that was so powerful for me from the beginning, that I really wanted to capture this situation. And with it come there are so many layers on top of that I wanted to give the film and the audience enough space to digest all that, and to really let it sink in, rather than rushing from one historical frame to the next. That was the idea behind it in the beginning.
Yeah, it's a very poetic portrait of, I think, of a complicated man, and I think that's the beauty of the film, that it's not a greatest hits of this man's career. I'm curious for you, Philippe, was there anything in the autobiography, in his earlier life or later life, that we don't see in the film, that was helpful for you in understanding him better, that you could bring to your performance?
I missed like half of your sentence, so I had to reconstruct it.
Oh, I can repeat. Was I cutting out?
Please? Yes, sorry.
Sure. Yeah. So was there anything in Stan's autobiography in his early days or his later days that we don't see in the film that was helpful for you, that you could bring in this particular moment in time that you play him?
Oh yes, yes. Obviously, the Lvov school, I mean, of mathematics, and the Scottish cafe, where with all those mathematicians, they were constantly, making some competition, mathematical competition with each other, and having fun actually. He even says it during the movie. I miss the jokes. Of course, he's speaking to his friend, but it's way more it's way more general in Stan's case. He misses this way of thinking and this way of being that was very, very present in Lvov, because that's the way I mean, that's the more creative part of his way of thinking. He's always thinking out of the box, and I think he bring this especially from there, with this synergy of very clever people in a very light way, playing with this very serious theme of mathematics, and it gives also another way of approaching the character, because when you play, well, let's face it, I mean, a genius, it would be sad, and we agreed this with Thor, that I wouldn't be able even to play a genius. I mean, let's face it too. But it would be sad actually to play the genius. It's way more interesting to play the normal guy behind this beautiful mind, because he was a normal guy. He was light. He wanted to have a laugh sometimes. So this is something we agreed with Thor. The lightfulness of the character had to be light, and I wanted to know where this lightness comes from.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think, as viewers, at least for me, I could still identify with him. It wasn't a type of character that, because he's so vastly intelligent, that he is not relatable at all, and that we don't understand the emotional experience he's going through. So I think that worked really well in the film. And I wanted to touch on something about about Stan's brother. Mentions, I think, a couple of times in the film about not wanting to identify as Jewish, and obviously he's gone through, a lot of pain and the tragedy of losing the sister. How did Stan identify with his Judaism? And did that come up in the autobiography? Did he kind of renounce his religion, or did he stay somewhat religious as a Jew later in his life?
Well, I can answer this best with an anecdote I've heard during my research. His brother, he suffered from what is called survivor's guilt. He really had, that was something that haunted him his whole life, and he wanted to appear as this. He liked to appear as this almost English guy in a way, the way he dressed, and this kind of wasp kind of thing. And he was celebrating his birthday one day, and Stan was coming, obviously, and he just was wearing a kippah just for the fun of it, not just to tease his brother, essentially, which led to a little conflict between them. But it was Stan's way of dealing with issues like that. He would wrap them in a joke a little bit and kind of made it into something funny, which obviously was not always funny for his peers. But Stan had a much more. He was aware of it, as they all were, and he never renounced that. He was also not particular religious. He was not. They grew up in a secular way, but he would never renounce that in any way. It's not.
Right.
And it shaped, of course, it shaped also the bond between all of them. I also tried to reference this in the film. It's that was of course part of the lifelong bond that they had.
Right. What do you know if the as brothers were they able to stay close, or later in their life were they?
They always were in touch. They would always speak on the phone, and they would also, because Stan's nephew, Adam's son, told me that at least once every other week the phone would ring, and then Adam would pick it up, and you would just hear tak tak, and you would hear them speaking Polish with each other. And so they that was also the fact that they both they shared this language with each other, which also was a bond. They always were in touch. They had their conflicts, and they were always there. But he was also incredibly proud of his brother. That there is no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really love the decision to shoot those scenes in Polish. I think it just provides such an intimacy between the brothers, which I really loved.
Yeah.
So one other question before we wrap it up here. I'm curious, did any of your views of that period of history change in any way from what you knew or thought of before after making this film?
That's a very good question. Well, one thing that changed a bit is that a lot of, particular Stan, took the job in Los Alamos in the first place out of practical reasons. He was an immigrant, and he needed a possibility to stay in the US. So it was not this big moral question in the very first place, even though of course it was attached. And I was not so this was one thing I was not so aware of beforehand. Before this, I was thinking beforehand that this was all about the from the beginning about this. They were all handpicked. Of course they were handpicked, but a lot of them ended also up there because it was just, they knew the people, they needed a job, and so as in the case of Johnny, they would bring him along. That changed, and the way I was not so aware in the beginning that that the US back in the days before they came was a bit of a when it comes to mathematics and physics, a bit of there was not so much going on, and before they came, and they enriched, they did not, in the first place, it was not necessarily the place they wanted to go. They would have picked probably England or whatever, because strictly speaking in mathematical terms, but they changed this place and they made it into something that was then that was or is one of the centers of the scientific world in the 20th century. That changed a bit. I was not so aware of that before I started the film.
Mm-hmm. How about for you, Lena or Philippe?
I mean, for me, I have to say I didn't know that much from the scientific point about the bomb and the hydrogen bomb and the differences, like how this kind of evolved the whole trajectory of the story. And what really spoke to me was more in the first place the immigration theme as well, and that actually a lot of immigrants were helping to build the bomb and not Americans, because first I just thought, okay, it's like American military or American scientists who worked on it in Los Alamos in New Mexico, and discovering this also through going to Los Alamos and meeting the historical society there, but also meeting the daughter of Stan Ulam, who could tell us about it, was really impressive for me.
Well, I guess it's my turn.
Yes.
I think I was, if I try to remember my position, although I don't think it was very aware. But I think I was guilty of seeing the bomb as a very in a very stereotypical typical way, as something bad, which is normal. I mean, it's but I didn't see that it's complicated. I didn't see this aspect of the story, that there is a paradox that is very present in this scenario, that there is a bizarre race for a even bigger bomb that, in a very paradoxical way, protects us until today from smaller bombs, although it's the same concept.
Right.
And the entire dilemma from this in this race is exactly there. I mean, it's two bad things, but the even worse thing is actually protecting us from the smaller bad things. So yeah, I probably learned to look at at history, our very, very sad history, very often, unfortunately, in a more paradoxical way. So it gives me more understanding and less judgment about what happened.
Yeah, very well said. And I think most viewers would probably agree with that. So I wanted to thank you all so much again for being here with us today, and of course for creating this very wonderful and contemplative film. I hope it brings more awareness to what Stan achieved in his life as well. And tell us what's next for the film. How can more people see it? Where is it going to be released? So forth.
Oh yeah, so the great thing is that Samuel Goldwyn Films is going to release our film later this year in fall, all around the US. But until then,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We're really thrilled about that. They picked up the film and said they're going to release it in fall. But until then, we're going to play a lot of more festivals in the US. In different states. So if you want to tell your friends, there's more news, and you can of course follow us on social media. And the great thing is also that the film will be theatrically released as soon as the cinemas are open again, also in Europe, for example in Poland, France, Germany and other countries. So yeah, there's still a lot in front of us, which is great.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. So those of you at home watching, please tell everyone to see this film. And thank you all so much for taking the time to speak with me today about the movie. And congratulations and good luck with whatever comes next. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.